Good day, folks, and welcome to another Ironman 4x4 vehicle build. I'm Mick van Zyl. This is a Subaru Outback, all-wheel drive SUV / station wagon. Bit more station wagon than SUV, but so be it. Now you're probably wondering, what is a soft roader all-wheel drive doing in a 4x4 workshop? And that's a fair question, so let me explain. Subaru vehicles are very popular in the USA. They are so popular, in fact, that our Ironman 4x4 office in the USA sent a message through to Melbourne asking the technical department to develop a suspension kit for this range of vehicles. And I'm talking about the entire range of Subaru SUVs. We have the Outback, we have the slightly smaller, taller Forester, and then we have the little XV, which is a very funky little vehicle. All three of those SUVs have got increased ground clearance when you compare them to similar SUVs, and they have quite substantial suspension travel, and they really lend themselves quite easily to having a proper suspension lift fitted to them. So Ironman 4x4 Australia heeded the call, and they have developed the new ATS or all-terrain suspension system for the range of Subaru vehicles with a proper 2 inches worth of lift. So these vehicles feature a coil-over strut system on every corner of the vehicle, both front and rear. And the Ironman 4x4 replacement kit actually comes in completely assembled struts. So shock absorber, coil spring, and brand new strut top is attached, and it's all one assembly. So it's a question of just taking the old one out, bolting the new one into place. And then on some of the vehicles, there is a little spacer kit that gets fitted onto the rear suspension subframe, just to give it more clearance because of the increased height and the increased suspension travel of the new kit. This particular vehicle belongs to the dealer principal at Subaru in Centurion. And he not only takes it to work and back, he actually takes it properly off-roading, which is why they've asked us to bring in one of our ATS suspension kits and fit it to the vehicle for them to evaluate and use. So naturally we obliged, and we have brought in a suspension kit for this vehicle. Now I'm pretty excited to see what it turns out like. We haven't done any SUV vehicles here yet, and it's not often that I get excited about vehicles that are not hardcore four-wheel drives, but I am quite excited about this one. In fact, so much so that I'm about to don a dust coat, and yes, folks, I'm going to be swinging the spanner on this job. Now, it's been a while, so stick around to see how that turns out.
Thank you for welcoming me here to Ironman. I'm the proprietor for Subaru Centurion, Pretoria area since April '97. I am a Subaru fanatic. I will not drive any other cars. The only car I understand is a Subaru, or a Subaru, however you want to pronounce it. Recently I bought myself a Subaru 3.6 Outback, and I've got a lodge in Mozambique, some sand roads. I was on the internet and I saw these suspension lift kits in America, and I really liked what they were doing there. And with the research, I got to Ironman in South Africa.
So the first order of business with any suspension fitment is to check that the parts that you've received are the correct parts. Now I've in fact done this already. I've got the Ironman 4x4 fitting instructions. They list all the parts that you need to do this job, and I've double checked the parts and it's all good. This is the fitting kit for the rear of the vehicle. This is a little spacer kit to drop the subframe down on the Subaru at the back to accommodate the increased wheel travel and articulation of the wheels. And then these 4 boxes here are 2 front struts and 2 rear struts. Now these struts come pre-assembled from Ironman, so unlike a Hilux or a Ford, you don't have to put them together. They are already put together, and they're just an absolute thing of beauty. Look at that. Those are stunning. I really cannot wait to get these in the vehicle, so let's get cracking. The next step is as important as checking the parts, and that is to measure the ride height of the vehicle as it is before you start working on the vehicle. It's very critical, folks, that you record that so that once you've fitted the suspension, that you know what lift you got and that the lift is actually within specification and that you haven't overlifted or the lift is insufficient. So a very important step. And we, in fact, here at Ironman 4x4 head office workshop, we measure every car that comes in here. If we're just fitting a bar and winch on the front, we measure before, we measure after, because if it's your vehicle and you want to know, well, it looks lower in the front, we can tell you exactly, yes, 15 mils lower in the front or whatever the case may be. So in order to do that, you have to record the pre-fitment measurement. So I'm going to do that right now. So folks, what we do when we record the ride heights of the vehicle, it's not just as straightforward as just measuring all 4 corners and jotting it down. A couple of things, especially if you're a stickler for detail like I am. Ensure that all the wheels obviously are the same. And record the wheel size. It's very important because we actually do the measurement from the bottom of the wheel, or the rim, to this surface of the fender. It's just the easiest and most consistent one that we use. It's sometimes very difficult to determine where the middle of the wheel is, and sometimes you've got a deep dish mag wheel, and to get the tape measure in there, it's a bit of a mission. So the easiest by far is to take it from here to there, but obviously you have to record what the wheel size is that's on the vehicle when you are doing the fitment, because the wheels may change. They might go down to a smaller rim or a bigger rim, and then when you compare measurements, they're going to be off. So the measurement is done typically from here to there. The other thing that you should do is just check that the tires are the same and that they have got the same pressure. Different size tires or differing air pressures, if there's a lot of difference, could make the car lean over one way or the other and affect the ride heights. Another thing that I like to do is when I pull the vehicle in to measure the ride heights, I drive it in very slowly and just let it roll to a stop, maybe stop with the brakes, but certainly don't pull the handbrake up or don't stop the vehicle with a handbrake. That can affect the lean of the vehicle as well, which will obviously affect your measurements. Also check out for stuff, especially overlanding vehicles that have been kitted out. If there are any heavy items on one side of the vehicle or on the other side of the vehicle, I'm talking about fridges, fuel tanks, water tanks, those will obviously affect the lean of the vehicle as well, and that will affect your measurements. So just check all of those things and certainly note them down on your job card. Because if the job comes back at a later stage for an issue or a change, then you have the original history of the vehicle. It's very important. So let's measure the four corners now, because I have checked everything that I've just spoken about, and I'm happy that it's all good. So this corner we're going to call 700 millimeters on the dot. Right. And then on the rear of the vehicle we have 690 millimeters. So that doesn't mean it's 10 millimeters lower at the rear. That's just the shape of the bodywork here compared to the shape of the bodywork there. So don't mind that the front is 700 and the rear is just 690. Doesn't mean that that the vehicle's leaning down in the back. It's just the shape of the body that's affected that. Let's get to the other side. Great, that's the vehicle measured up. This vehicle is actually very level. Front is identical, rear is identical, that's a good start. So what I'm going to do now is crack the nuts off the wheels, lift it up in the air, take the wheels off, and then we'll have a quick squiz and see what we're dealing with this fitment.
Let's go.
The great thing about working in the workshop when it's winter is that you get hot very quickly, so that's good. Right, before I lift the vehicle up into the air, I need to loosen some nuts under the bonnet here. These are 3 nuts on either strut right on top that actually hold it in place, and we need to just loosen those. I'm talking about these three nuts over here. So we'll just loosen those off, but not take them off totally, because then the strut will drop out, but we just want to loosen them before it's right up in the air. And then in the rear of the vehicle we have a similar setup. That's nice, that would be nice on the cruiser. We just need to get into the bottom here. And over here we have 2 nuts that actually hold the strut top of the rear strut. So we'll crack those off as well and just loosen them a little bit so that they're easier to get to when the vehicle is up in the air. And then on the front we have these 3 ones. Strangely, the front and rear nut sizes are not the same. It's tingling my OCD a little bit, but I'm fine. You'll also notice that I don't really like to use air tools. I find them very aggressive. Certainly if there's a nut that's too tight, yes. If you need to crack it, it's seized up, use an air tool, but I like to use manual tools. They operate at my speed, slowly. Right, that's fine for that side. Just the other side. Folks, very important, don't loosen them all the way. Just enough, because it's still holding the top of the strut in place. Just like that. Youngsters. So folks, over the years I have fitted a number of suspension systems, but this is the first time I'm working on this vehicle. So it's always a good idea to refer to the product's fitting instructions, and we, Ironman 4x4, have some lovely fitting instructions for this vehicle, quite comprehensive. I have actually had a look through them, and well, there's nothing new. I was pretty much aware of everything that needed to be done. The one thing I want to say about suspension systems on modern vehicles is that they feature a lot of electronics and wiring nowadays. Apart from brake lines, most vehicles have ABS brakes, and this little wire that you see over here is an ABS brake wire. And the problem with this wire is it's very fragile. So the point is that when you're disassembling here, that's one of the first wires that you need to take off and put it out of the way somewhere where it's not going to get broken or damaged, because if you put the car together and you're done with the job and you're really chuffed with yourself and you switch the ignition on and the ABS light comes on, you know that there's an issue, and then you have to look for the issue, and it's just a big old pain in the bum. So take care of this wire, don't damage it. With that said, let me loosen all of the components at the bottom here, and the top is done, and that should just slip out. So let's see how that works. Let's briefly run through the sequence of disassembly on the front strut. The first thing I like to do is to undo the ABS wire and let it hang freely. There's less chance of it getting damaged. The next thing we need to undo is the brake line, and then the last thing, which is attached to the strut, is the sway bar link. That's just a simple bolt at the back here, and those are really the only three things that are attached to the strut. So with those out of the way, all that's left for us to do is to undo these two camber bolts, pull those out, and the strut assembly will be then free from the stub axle assembly. So that is the left front strut out of the vehicle. Now, something interesting to note, that the struts left and right on the front of the suspension are different. They're different part numbers. Because of the attachments, these brackets for the ABS wire and for the brake wire, on the other side shock absorber, they'll be on the other side. But on the rear suspension on this vehicle, it's specifically, the left and right strut are the same. Let's have a look at the replacement Ironman strut. Wow, that is just a beautiful looking piece of kit. Let's have a quick look at the difference between the Ironman strut and the original Subaru strut. You can see that the Ironman strut is about 50 mils longer than the original strut, and that gives us our 50 mils worth of lift. Now, obviously, the geometry on the front of the Subaru allows us to fit a longer strut. A longer strut is going to allow the wheel to droop down further, better articulation, but one always has to look at drive shaft angles and things like that. On this vehicle, it allows for this type of lift, and that's why we went ahead and developed this kit. So the assembly of the front suspension is really the reverse of the removal. So that's the strut back in on this side. The only thing that we cannot attach is the sway bar link, and that's because this strut is slightly longer and the holes don't line up, so we actually need to do the other side first and then assemble that side completely and come back here and just pop this last one in, double check everything, and then the front will be done. And now for the rear suspension. Before we get to actually changing the rear struts, we need to put a spacer kit above the subframe, the suspension subframe, to drop the subframe down to allow for the additional movement of the suspension. And it involves supporting the subframe, loosening it off, dropping it down very slowly, and the suspension kit is supplied with a proper spacer kit. We'll put all the spacers in, tighten it all up, and then we'll replace the two struts at the rear. It should be simple. Right, let's get going. Folks, I thought I'd take a moment just to show you what it is that I'm doing. This is the subframe onto which the suspension is mounted, and it in turn is mounted onto the body of the vehicle with these big rubber mountings. And essentially what we're doing is we're putting a spacer kit, a 40mm spacer kit. There are 10 spacers that we need to fit between the subframe and the subframe mounting and the actual body of the vehicle. Comes with the hardware, the longer bolts. It's a bit of a process, especially the first time you do it, and especially if you haven't been swinging spanners for a while, so working up a bit of a sweat, but loving it, enjoying it. So let me carry on. Right, so the subframe spacers are in. First time doing it is a bit difficult, but I'm sure the second and third time will be a lot easier. All that's left to do now is to pop out the two rear struts, pop the new ones in, put everything back together, tighten all the nuts and bolts, check everything from front to rear, all the bolts that were loosened if they're tight and torqued properly, and then we'll drop it down onto its wheels and see what it come out like. Right, so this is the moment of truth. We have fitted the Subaru suspension. It's been wheel aligned. The wheel alignment came out really good. So I'm heading out on a road test just to check for noises and anything funny. This is not a conventional suspension lift like we normally do with four-wheel drives where it involves load or it involves a lift. This is a lift kit as well as a dynamic handling kit. Now, we're just going to do a road test, but I am going to go over some rough terrain at a bit of speed within the limit and also do a bit of a lane change test just to see what it does and that there's no surprises. Right, firstly we're going to go over the speed bump at way too quickly. Wow. I don't know what to say, that's massively impressive. That is just, wow. Smooth, no noise, no crash bang. Those were big bumps. Whew. That's massively impressive. Now that comes from that additional 50 mils worth of travel on the suspension. That's massively impressive. So when you're off-roading and you're on rough terrain, rough gravel road, even if it's got, whatever, you can travel very safely over that. The one thing that I do notice, especially when driving around town, is you've got manhole covers and you've got places where they've dug up and put tar back in and it's not flat anymore. So there's a lot of undulations and bumps and holes in the road, and there's quite a bit of feedback into the cabin of the vehicle for two reasons. Firstly, this vehicle is riding on 18-inch wheels with quite low profile tires. And ideally, we're going to look at changing that and bring the wheels back from 18 to 17 inch, keep the same circumference of tire, or we might elect to go slightly bigger on the tire, and that'll give us a much bigger profile on the tire, or taller profile on the tire, and it just smooths out the ride and takes that crash bang from the tires out of the ride. Okay, so we're going to find a little quiet spot just outside of town where there's no traffic. And I just want to do just a lane change to see stability-wise if everything is okay. I want this in the Land Cruiser. I don't think I'm going to get it though. The Land Cruiser has to carry load. It's a much heavier vehicle, so that's a different type of suspension. Would be nice though. That was very impressive. So here we go. We'll do that again. And that is just flat as. That's very good. That is superb. That's very important when you're driving along and you have to take evasive action. In fact, overseas they call it the moose test, and you'll be surprised how many vehicles absolutely flatly fail it. This suspension is supple, yet controlled. It's not wallowy at all. I think the chaps at Ironman's technical department have done a 120% out of 100% on this job. Seriously, I'm over the moon with it. I cannot wait to see what the dealer principal from Subaru has to say, because like I said, he takes this vehicle into places where he really shouldn't. I can't wait to see what he thinks. We'll find out. They're about to come and fetch the vehicle. We'll definitely go on a test drive with him and see what he has to say. I'm positive he's going to be over the moon. The Subaru has been wheel aligned. I've done a road test in it, and it's now time to do the post-fitment ride height measurements. We do this right at the end because we've road tested and everything is settled. So let's quickly measure her up and see how she compares to pre-fitment. So the final measurements are 50 millimeters increase in ride height on the front and a touch over 50 on the rear, which is right in the ballpark for the suspension kit. A really good result, and I'm really, really stoked with the ride quality of the vehicle. Busting to hear what the owner has to say, but I'm really happy. Job well done.
I am now here to come and fetch my car after they have put in the new suspension. I'm also going to put on new rims, and I'm going to put on new tires, roof rail. And I must say, I took it for a ride just now. And I must say, so far I'm very impressed. With my car now, I can cross a speed bump. It feels like I'm on my adventure bike. That is quite something, I must say. You know, what you can do with an all-wheel drive car is you can go through corners quite fast because of the handling of the car. And I was surprised to see that the car has still got very little body roll, even though that the suspension has been lifted. And I am impressed, and I look forward to give some more feedback regarding my experience with the new suspension. So I'll keep in touch. Thank you very much.